Hello and welcome to On the Way Moments, a podcast from St. Anthony on the Desert here in chilly Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm Will Strong.
And I'm Jill Kyler. Well,
Exciting day.
This is an exciting day. This is going to be our episode on Christmas memories. And it's not going to be just our memories, but we have several guests who have some wonderful stories to tell that we think you're really going to enjoy. So, to kick us off, Will, how about you?
All right.
You have a Christmas memory?
I do. It took me a while to think of one. My grandparents were snowbirds, and they would always go down to Texas. Growing up in Nebraska, they would go south, and for about a week in December over Christmas, they would come up and they would bring us gifts and everything. And so there would be about 18 of us with my cousins and aunts and uncles and grandma and grandpa. And so I didn't realize that I thought everybody did this, but for dessert, we would have birthday cake and ice cream, and we would sing Happy Birthday to Jesus. Did not realize that, it wasn't until I was later on in my age that I realized that not everybody did that.
No.
And so that was one I still think about every Christmas. Do I do it every Christmas? Nope. But I think about, what is that holiday tradition we used to sing Happy Birthday to Jesus?
So do you think you might start doing
Maybe.
it?
You know what? I mean, it really is Jesus' birthday.
Exactly.
I mean, so why wouldn't we sing Happy Birthday? But
Exactly. What did the cake look like?
it was usually a white frosted cake that said Happy Birthday Jesus on it. And I just thought that's what we had.
That's wonderful.
So,
that's a wonderful tradition.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And so we're just going to get started, jump right in. We're going to turn it over to Jeanne Paige.
Growing up in what was then just Scottsdale, now it's South Scottsdale, we had a definite sequence of events for Christmas. It started with going to 8 o'clock mass, and all of my brothers were altar boys. It didn't matter if they had served at midnight mass. We all went to 8 o'clock mass. And then we went to breakfast at the Valley Ho. And then, keep in mind, we haven't opened presents yet. Then we would go and visit a client of my dad's who lived all by herself. Her name was Ella Becker, and she was even older than my parents, so she was old. And she lived by herself, so her house had that smell of somebody who lives by themselves. So for the 9 of us, first of all, we didn't understand why we were going to this woman's house. And second of all, it wasn't something we enjoyed at all. So we go and we just sit there and visit for a while, and then we go home and open up the presents. Well, I don't know how long it took me for the lightning to strike to realize that my parents were not trying to torture us by delaying the gift giving until after all the other things. They were trying to teach us what they thought was the most important thing that we needed to do and the least important and everything in between. The last thing we did was opening the gifts. And in between was sharing Christmas with somebody who otherwise, there was nobody that ever visited her. It just took me a little while to get that message across in my head, but that's a memory that has stayed with me.
That was really wonderful. We love hearing stories about your family. And next, we're going to hear from Bob Perrino.
I look back to when I was about 6 years old, visiting Santa Claus in a department store in Providence, Rhode Island. A little scared, my heart pounding, and Santa Claus asked me, what do I want for Christmas? I was speechless. Finally, I stuttered out and said, train set. Christmas evening, my sister and I leave a glass of milk and a plate of cookies on the kitchen table. First thing Christmas morning, of course, I'm the first one up. I wake up my sister, we dash to the kitchen. Sure enough, the milk is gone and the cookies are gone. I rush to the Christmas tree. There's a Lionel train set there. I look back and I still feel that little boy is still who I am. So I can still have wonder when I celebrate this great event when the Creator becomes part of the creation. God becomes man, becomes human, just like me. And I thank God for that.
Thanks, Bob. All right. Next up is Miss Melody Taylor.
Christmas for me is all about family. And ever since I was just a young girl, I can remember running out into the living room, and Christmas morning, the Christmas tree was just bustling and full of presents for my sisters and I. And after we had a wonderful Christmas, I can remember suddenly a beautiful meal being prepared and being placed on the dining room table. And we would sit down to this meal, our extended family would arrive, and we just had the best day ever. I never really thought about how all of that happened, how the Christmas presents arrived, how the dinner was made with the amazing side dishes, the Jell-O salad and chocolate mousse every year, and that it was all just perfect. So then later on in life, I realized that as my parents became Santa, they would come out in the morning wearing their Santa hats, and we would all gather and they would pass out our bags with our names on it. And by this time there's 18 people in our family, and they would give us our bags and we would get our stockings, and everybody would open their stockings full of toothpaste and deodorant and chocolate coins and all of the essentials that we needed. And then one by one, my parents handed all of the gifts out and we watched every person open them. It took forever, but it was the best thing ever. And the last Christmas that I had with my family, with my parents, was in Colorado at their summer home. Faith wanted to go up there, and so she asked my parents because it was the last year she would be able to go. And of course, my dad said, "Nope, I'm not going. I'm not paying. It's too cold." And my dad, he said, "But you can go and you can pay your way." Well, of course, we're all adults. So we said, "Okay, we'll go." And my mom said, "And I'm going with you." A few days later, Faith went to my dad and said, "Oh, please, Grandpa, come." And of course, in his usual fashion, "Faith, whatever you ask for." So he went with us. And what a blessing to be in Estes Park with my family for that last Christmas. We watched the Cardinals football game. We ice skated outdoors. We had snowball fights. We played soccer in the driveway. We ate chocolate gravy every morning. We worshiped in the tiny little Episcopal church up there. And my parents were Santa one more time for us. The other tradition I just want to share is that my mom always gave us a Christmas ornament every year. So the first Christmas I had without her, my husband got me this darling ornament that says love, because the last thing Dorian told me was to love like Mary. And every Christmas, that's just what I'm trying to do. I feel like Christmas is a time for family. And if I can be half of who my mom was and spread the love, then it will be a wonderful season.
Thank you, Melody. That was a beautiful story. And next we're going to hear from Sara Gates.
Now, in our house, Christmas was the season, and it was kind of everything from the decorating and the cookie making. And it always started the Friday after Thanksgiving. That was when we would kind of bring the tree out. We would start decorating it. My mom she had what I call a scrapbook tree, and it was ornaments of all of the adventures she'd been on and everywhere everything we had done as a family. And so when I was old enough to get my own tree, I think I broke her heart a little bit in that I took a bunch of my ornaments, which every mom knows, and I just didn't realize at the time, those were not my ornaments, those were her ornaments, but she let me take them. And I started my own scrapbook tree. And so much so that anytime we go on vacation, anything we do with my family now, there's always an ornament that's picked up along the way. And it's so ingrained in kind of what we do and who we are as a family that when my now husband actually proposed, he was hooking ornaments sitting on the couch and put an engagement ring on the hook. And of course, I didn't realize what it was. And so I couldn't figure out what this tiny, I think I called it dinky. I believe I said, "What dinky little thing is that?" Because for an ornament, it was very small. For a ring, it was perfect. And that now is just all the more part of our family tradition. And so now my kids and I, they each have their own box of their ornaments, and we decorate the tree and we talk about all these things that we've done. And it's just such a great time of reflection to look at all these memories that we've made throughout the year, but to really come together and talk about those and share those with each other. And so I'm just grateful that my mom gave me that gift when I was growing up, and now I'm doing the same for my kids.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. That was a good story. We always appreciate that. So next we're going to hear from Jerry Howell.
When the charge came up to come up with the most memorable Christmas, it wasn't difficult for me to decide which one that would be, and it happened in 2006. Vicki and I are a blended family, and the kids had been together at our wedding and a few other times, but not in the concentrated time frame of a Christmas holiday. And so we ended up having 11 people fly in. Some of them took the train. Some of them thought that was a nice adventure. Some of them didn't think that was such a nice adventure, but they got here. Those on the plane had some trouble getting here, and then even worse trouble getting back home, got delayed in Dallas for 24 hours. And so it was a challenge for all of them. And as a result, memorable for all of them. At the time, we were living in Show Low, and we had a rather large home, and a home that happened to be constructed so that the family room and kitchen were all one big central place. And so during that week, things like eggnog became legal 24 hours a day. The fireplace ran 24 hours a day. The refrigerator was empty 24 hours a day, just about. But it was a time that we got together. And when I petitioned the kids over the last week or so, it was memorable because it was memorable to them as well. They recall the time of slopping around on couches, sleeping 11 in the same house, finding out what everybody looks like in pajamas and hair uncombed, and hours telling stories, actually singing carols together with people with songbooks that were left out. So it was a joyful time, and what makes it joyful is the people that were involved in. Our daughter and son-in-law in Kentucky had taken on a foreign exchange student. His name was Kip. He was from Hong Kong. And this young man had had a year full of surprises. He left Hong Kong for the first time in his life. He lived in an apartment that was about 600 square feet, maybe, if that, with his parents on the 6th floor of a building. And he gets in a plane and he flies to Louisville, Kentucky, gets picked up by our son-in-law and daughter, and driven out to the 14-acre little horse farm that he's going to live on for a year. You talk about culture shock, going from downtown Hong Kong to being able to stand on their deck and look over 6, 8, 10 acres of rolling green grass on the hillside and nobody around except some horses and chickens and the like. At any rate, Kit was the honored guest for the Christmas thing, and he had decided early on he was kind of infatuated with shirts that had the names of states on it. So Vicki and I started petitioning all of our friends, if you would, stop by and pick up a shirt that has a state on it. Well, as a result, Kit got his fair share of Christmas presents that year. I think that numbered 30-some shirts that he ended up in a stack. And one of the memorable things for all of us was, here's a young man sitting and celebrating Christmas as he had never, ever witnessed before. He went to a Christian school, but his parents didn't celebrate Christmas. They didn't have decorations up. And he comes to America and witnesses this, unbelievable display every place you look. He gets his presents, and as we're handing out presents, he took a present and he would stack it this way. And then he got another present and he would stack it right next to that one. And then he got another present, he would stack them. By the time he got finished getting all his presents, we looked over and he had a stack that was about 2.5, 3 feet tall, but it didn't take up much space. And we all thought, that kid comes from a place like Hong Kong where you take advantage of space and you make use of it. So we went through all that. He unwraps his packages, and as he unwraps them, he puts them back in the box, and that box gets stacked like this, and the next box gets stacked. It isn't a display of clutter all over the place. Everything was contained and held. So besides getting his share of Christmas presents, he got snow for the first time in his life. He went sledding for the first time in his life. Our son-in-law took him out to Sunrise ski resort and tried to kill him on skis, but he went skiing for the first time in his life. And Kit and I just talked about that the other day. one of the things that he remembers about all the food, he says, everybody kept telling me I keep putting gravy on everything. For some, I don't recall that, but that was something that was memorable to him. My granddaughter was 8 at the time and had a room full of people, and not inhibited at all. She said, we're going to play charades. Somehow she picked up charades someplace, and here she is leading all of us and playing charades. And it was a perfect blend of getting families to know families and getting to share your weaknesses and your strengths and how open you could be. So the few days were successful to us as far as bringing the kids together and being able to share that time. One of the nights we got together with another Midwestern family. We're all from the Midwest. And we went to a restaurant called the Christmas Tree Restaurant. I don't know if any of you have ever been up in Shoalo. Restaurant ran for 27 years. And from the time you walk in the door, there's Christmas tree ornaments on every wall in every room of that restaurant. And the tables are always decorated like Christmas. So we joined another family of 6. And so we had 17 for dinner at the Christmas Tree Restaurant in this Christmas season. All of us left, I think, with the same grateful feeling to be able to bring family together, the diverse backgrounds together, to bring this non-Christian kid at the time together. And so we're grateful for that.
Thank you, Jerry, for sharing that with us. And next up is Katherine Gilbert.
So when I started thinking, when Jill asked me to do this, I instantly thought of Christmas pageants. When we lived in a small town in rural Michigan, I was the director of Christian education. The title was bigger than the role, honestly. And it was really fun. We a very tight-knit church faith community. And, there's countless stories with my girls and great memories, but these memories of these Christmas pageants just resonated with me. And so one year in particular stood out because, and it wasn't the year the kid threw up in the back of the church, though that was memorable too. But it was this year, first to start off where, of course, it's frenetic, kinetic. Everybody's going every which way trying to get ready for a Christmas pageant. And the kids have been practicing and they were all ready. They're all at the great ages where they were actually interested in doing it. I got no rolling eyes or anything, and they were all engaged. And then Caitlin, my youngest daughter, comes to me, and her doll, her bitty baby American Girl doll, was playing baby Jesus. And she goes, Mom, Jenny doesn't want to play a boy. And so I go, oh, and I'm thinking of all that's going on. Now I have to talk to Caitlin. She goes, I've got it under control though, Mom. I talked to her, it's just a role, and she's not really a boy, she's just playing a boy. So I'm like, oh, great. And so we go ahead, and the kids are all excited about doing the roles, and all the kids had parts, and they all had speaking parts. And we always use the cycle, the Episcopal literature cycle. And this was this short year we were studying Matthew. And in Matthew, we hear from Joseph. And so there was a little boy named Jacob, and he was playing Joseph, and he took his role very, very seriously. And so when it was his time, and he comes to find out that Mary is about to give birth to this baby that's not his. And Jacob's line was, this is how he delivered it: she's having a baby. And of course, the congregation just laughed, and it was chuckled, and it was great. And the pageant went on from there, and a very loving community, and the kids loved it. Well, as the tradition in that church was, on that Sunday, which was the fourth Sunday in Advent, we also had a Christmas lunch to celebrate the kids, and it was all about the kids. And I think, typical Episcopalian potluck. It was wonderful. And we were talking about how Jacob playing Joseph was probably the most authentic reaction that Joseph probably really had when he heard about Mary having a baby. And I think, look back on that time, and as fun as the pageants were, it was really about being in a community of faith. And because we moved away from our family when the kids, my girls, again, Emily and Caitlin, were 5 and 2. And my mother very wisely gave me the advice, don't try uprooting the kids for Christmas. Let them have Christmas at home. But that became our family, our church family, this little, small, beautiful church community. And we were very tight knit, and our Sunday school was wonderful. And then we moved to Arizona and we found St. Anthony and we had the same experience. We have this beautiful faith community. We have the luminaries and the youth group and Sunday school, and it was still the same. And every year it's a little different because everybody grows and changes, but every year it's a sense of community. And really that's what Joseph started by saying yes, right? And how great it was that Jacob played that role of Joseph, and then we all embraced that love that Christ gave, and that Joseph made a great sacrifice by being Jesus's earthly father. And I'm always tickled by that story.
That's a great story, Katherine. Thank you so much for sharing. And last but definitely not least is Rachel Judge.
Well, thanks for having me on. This is so fun to get to see so many familiar faces and part of our St. Anthony family. I was really thinking about the church, our traditions from church, and Katherine just had a nod at this, but the luminary setup, every year, as long as I can remember, we had years where we set up luminaries down Shea Boulevard. There were thousands. It seemed that way at the time. It might have been hundreds, but there were years where it was a huge display. There were years where it was a little more intimate in the courtyard, but the process of a few Sundays before, the folding of the bags, the filling them with sand, showing up on Christmas Eve morning to set them up. I think I was just so blessed to have such a good group of youth surrounding me as I grew up. And then in college, when we came home, people would show up on Christmas Eve morning and set up luminaries, even if they hadn't been there and they didn't really know what was going on. It was a place to come home to. And then I was thinking about Faith Taylor. One of my earliest memories of Faith, Melody had just had her, and she was adamant that Faith had to be wrapped in purple and not blue because she was going to be the baby Jesus. But we had to make sure that she was very swaddled so femininely. And I sat as Mary in like a little nativity scene right after church. And then having that memory for me and watching Faith grow up, it's such a family and a community, and just Christmas just means being together and doing things, simple things. When Jeanne was talking about the things that matter, like, man, that was such a beautiful story, Jeanne. And I'm like so touched to have grown up and have lasting relationships with people from church. And my family also does Christmas ornaments. My mom every year makes an ornament for everybody in our family and decorates the tree. And I have ornaments from the year I broke my leg. I have a little ice skater with a swaddled patch around the leg from I was in a wheelchair for months. But every year when I hang the ornaments up, and I also stole my ornaments from my mom, Sara. So I have 33 years of ornaments from my mom on my tree. And every year when I put them up, we think about how cool it was that in 2009, I was in Times Square and we put the confetti from that went off at New Year's Eve into an ornament. My mom wrote Happy New Year on it, and that goes up on the tree. And the year we went to the balloon fiesta all together, we bought a balloon fiesta ornament, and just such a cool remembrance of all the things you do with your family. So, and I'm so glad that I got to share some of those with you guys.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing.
That was great.
We weren't expecting that. A lot of these were just, all of them were wonderful.
Okay.
All right, Jill. Now it's your turn to share your favorite Christmas memory.
Okay. Well, when I was growing up, my dad was in the Marine Corps, and he would be gone over most Christmases. He'd leave in September and come back in May. And we'd always celebrate Christmas whenever he was back. But because of that, we didn't really have any Christmas traditions because we never knew when we were going to be together again.
Right.
And celebrating Christmas in the middle of the summer doesn't really inspire you to create Christmas traditions. And then later, when I was in my 20s, I became a flight attendant. And as a flight attendant, you work holidays, a lot of holidays.
Most of them, yes.
And so again, no Christmas traditions. You know, where am I going to be laying over? Oh, Atlanta. Okay. And it wasn't until after my daughter was born that I really started thinking about traditions and how important they were. And since we were all together, we could be home. We started Christmas traditions that we just kept doing every year. And, you know, it started right after Thanksgiving, and we'd put up the tree the day after Thanksgiving. And then we'd bake cookies. And while we were putting the tree up, we always had one album that we had to play, and that was the Christmas album by Mannheim Steamroller, because you can dance, and it was really wonderful. And the tree itself became just a memory of everything that we had done and the different places we had been. And it was just wonderful every year recounting all that, because sometimes you go, oh, I forgot about that. So we would do that, and then we always opened a present on Christmas Eve after we went to the Christmas Eve worship services. And then Christmas morning we would unwrap presents, and it would be one at a time, and we'd see what, it was just the three of us, but what the presents were. And it was just wonderful. Loved it. And I think I'm going to have a new tradition. Okay. Because this year, over Thanksgiving, my grandson, who's 4, Jackson, visited me with his parents, brought his parents, and I had already put the Christmas tree up because I wanted the house to look festive while they were there. Well, he proceeded to undecorate the bottom of the Christmas tree because he said that they weren't decorations. They were pictures and toys. So he could see no reason why I should have all these memories up there. And I asked him, well, what are decorations then? And he said, well, you know, the glass ornaments. And I don't really have those. My tree is filled with everything else.
You have the pictures and memories.
Yeah, and the toys.
And the toys.
Yeah. And he did find a big jar of glass ornaments that I had sitting on a table. And so he put all of those on the tree. And the things that he took off the tree kind of hid underneath. And after it was all done, he was really pleased. Good. And he said, Grandma, next year, wait for me. So that, I think, will be the new tradition.
I mean, it has to be.
Of course.
I mean, he told you to wait.
Of course. So I'll be waiting for Jackson to help me decorate my Christmas tree next year.
That is great. Thank you for sharing. That's wonderful. And thank you all for listening. Thank you to our guest today. That's all we got, but it's we'll see you next year. This is our season finale. So
yes, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you soon, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.